So I've just come back from a break, and on looking at the picture after the blocking, there's a few little tweaks and adjustments that I want to make. One of the things that I've used to help me recognise the little elements that I need to change was using the mirror. So to help look at the mistakes and the problems, I've just held up this mirror, and what I'm doing, I'm looking at the mirror, which is the reflected version. So it's sort of flipped around the mirror image version. So it's the same thing, but seen in a completely different context, a new light, new pair of eyes, if you like, and I'm able to sort of see this objectively, and suddenly the things that need work suddenly start popping out. So looking, I can see that sort of this part of the nose just needs a little kind of little bit of work. This bit just feels a little bit too large. Looking at the eye on this side just needs to be just a little bit wider. Also checking out the jaw on this side could do with just coming in a little bit, and the same with this bit on here. The shadow needs developing. So lots of things like that I use the mirror just to help me look at it more objectively, and taking a break has helped me as well. Just get that bit of mental distance, come back to it fresh and seeing it more clearer and more objectively. So I'm just going to just do a couple of marks just to help push those bits back to where I think they should be, and then I'll get on and put in the finishing touches and looking at the detail. So just sort of strengthening that dark there, that cheekbone, and transition there. And to look at sort of shaping in the nose here, just stop making it a little on the wide side, so just taking that in. I think it's partly to do with that dark shadow that's done that. So always looking at it objectively and always looking at it fresh. Let's look at this eye at the top. Just want to widen it a little bit, both on the left hand side and the right hand side, only by a millimetre or so. Like that, and it just sort of fills the proportion of the face just that little bit better. So this is still, I suppose, an element of draftsmanship taking place at this stage, and just want to strengthen the reds, the warmth that I can see in the shadow of the cheekbone on that side. There, let's just look at that mirror reflection and just see how that's helped or not. Much more pleased with those little adjustments. And I want to look at the area here. So this part, sort of the cheek and jaw, is just a little clumsily handled, so I think I can do a little better job rescuing that and just refining it a little bit. I think this marker is going to come up a little harsher. Just keep that edge relatively soft. And it's lighter in value there. And I think that highlight isn't quite as light as that, so I'm just going to take that back just with the oranges and the reds. And possibly just strengthen the red there, a bit of, I suppose that sort of reflected light really in many ways from the hair. Let's just put a bit more of that in because it's quite satisfying to see the warmth of the red. Just going to soften that back there, allow that just to melt away. So just see how that looks now. Great, and there is just that little plunk of a suggestion of an ear, which I like, just sort of sits in there, which is quite satisfying, just catching the light. Okay, so it's at this stage where I'm going to start refining it, and I suppose sort of bringing out the facial features and start modelling those areas. It's another way of saying doing the detail, but I don't like using the word detail because sometimes that can really ruin the portrait. So I'm going to start sort of modelling the facial features, and I'll start off with the eyes, work down to the nose and the mouth. So I'll start off with the eye on the left-hand side, and when it comes to modelling a facial feature, I do two things. Firstly, it's important not to focus just on the eye itself, so the eyeball. What you need to look at is the whole region of the eye. So for example, that would include the eyelids, the eyelashes, the brow, the bridge of the nose, and the upper cheekbone. So it's that whole region area, not just the eye itself. You hear it all the time where I'm teaching and sometimes people say, oh, I've painted this eye 3 times and it's all wrong. And most of the time that eye has been painted correctly 3 times. They've just forgotten that all the surrounding furniture is just as important, the foundations of that facial feature. So, I bear in mind I'm looking at not just the eye, but the whole region of the eye. The second point is when I do that, I work from dark to light. So it's sort of a mini version of what we've already done as a whole, looking at the darker features first, working towards the mid-tones, and then the highlights. So that's what I'm going to do first. And I'll be working with a little bit of thicker paints this time. I'm going to use my little finger as a sort of a rest there. So my finger's just on this part of the painting which is not soaking wet, and that's just allowing me to anchor and take the weight of the hand and the brush, giving me greater control. It's another way of sort of doing a marl stick, which is a big stick with a ball on the end, but you can use a clean brush if you feel that, or if you've got the strength and confidence, you can do it alone without the need of any type of support. So let's look at that. And I'm having 2 brushes. One brush is going to act as my darker brush, and the other brush, like this one, is going to act as my lighter brush. It's got light in the dark and light in the dark. And some of the brushes may come into the mix as we go, but for the moment, this is how it's going to be. I love how the light is just hitting the top of the eyelashes, sort of going across there. And there's such a dark suggestion of the white of the eye just to the left, and it's so dark, but just a hint of lightness like that, I think, just gives that subtle illusion that there's something else hiding in there. And then we've got the strong eye makeup as well, which pings the eye up. So let's look at the shadow now of the next darkest thing. So moving away from that eye, we've also got this eyebrow, which is sort of taken up a little bit too high for where I think it should be. I think it should come down lower. So I'm going to put that there and get slightly warmer. And also that will also go lighter, thinking of both temperature and tone as I go. Light and dark, warm and cool. And if you struggle to see those tonal values, those lightness and darkness of the colours, then try just half closing your eyes and paint with a squinted eye. The less you see, the easier it will be. Make sure you squint just at your reference. In this case, our photograph, or if you're working from a live model, just squint at your live model. Don't squint at your painting. That's not very useful. You need your eyes sort of open for the comparison, but it's good to squint to see the tonal values. It's not good for colour recognition, so you need your eyes open to see the exact colour, but for tone, squinting is a great, quick, free, cheap and easy way of doing it. And if you wear glasses, it's even easier. You just take off those glasses. Now let's look at the subtle shadow. Sort of purpley shadow here. That's almost created by the eyelashes. I think they're very beautiful. And I can see that same purple colour, that dark purple created by the red and the black. So I'm seeing there. And then pushing towards the highlight. Then it's just a bit heavy-handed, this highlight, so I'm just going to, with a bit more on the brush, gently brush it away and allow those edges just to sort of melt away into the surrounding colours. So it's not so much blending, you're just marrying the edges into each other. Let's look at the eyebrow. I think that could do with just being stronger, darker there, and also that's coming a tad lower and then warmer in the eye socket itself here. Little flecks of paint here, there and everywhere. Looking at the warmth of the edge, which I quite like, and then also taking the background of the darkness up there as well, which will just help it stand out. Let's look at the light on the eyes that little bit more. Just catching the eyelashes there. Is that a little bit too much? I'm not sure. Maybe if I just soften the edge, it won't be so strong. I need to now work across the portrait, to work across the head, to looking at the bridge now. So I need to sort of look at this area there, to the right of the eye. So there's a highlight here that I need to strengthen, which is right by there. A little bolder. And I'm going to take another brush out. So I've got a real strong, I've got 3 brushes. I've got one which is, my black or very dark. So I've got this one, which is now sort of turned into my lightest pale. So I'm going to take up the third, which will be my mid-tone now. So I've got a light brush, a mid-tone, and a dark brush. 1, 2, 3. And that'll just stop me getting mixed up and muddy and lost. So that I have the right tool doing the right thing and the right job at the right time. Swap into the highlight brush and just push in that a bit further. Wipe off the excess as I've done, and then just soften again those edges so they just merge in with each other. And strengthen it a little bit more. And take a little bit more intensity. Okay, now I'm going to sort of travel across here, so I need to check the middle of that nose, the sort of the bridge of the nose. This bit here, which is quite dark, tonally. There, and then let's get a bit blacker and start hitting this side. So where that point comes is as low as that. So it's still moving, it's still changing. I want to get that cool colour. A little bit more black. Just in this area there. Lovely transition between the light and the dark. Just wiped off the brush there just so I can smooth that through. And let's look at the eyebrow now, which is really dark. So we've got quite a large area there. Slightly higher with the eyebrow. And with a highlight brush, just take the upper eyelid down a fraction. There is an eyelid underneath. It's almost completely hidden, but there is one I can just see there. And then it melts away into pure darkness. So if it isn't there, don't put it. But if you can see it, paint what you see, not what you think you see. And I want to get that suggestion of, again, the light hitting the eyelashes, which sort of gently melt away over there. And again, there's an even darker suggestion of where a white of the eye is, so I've made it very dark grey because that's how it looks. Remember, the white of the eye is never white. In fact, it's darker than I put it as well, because an eye is sunken into shadow. Let's look at that top here. So this needs to be lighter, and just bringing it down a fraction there, just following the curve of the skull at the top of the eyebrow, and all across there is lighter. Hint more ochre in that, which will also make it lighter as well. A little bit paler. Soften that in again, you get that finger to do that. and darker brush just to show the warmth up there. Okay, now let's look at just this area of the nose. I don't want to do too much to the nose actually, because I quite just like how I think it works quite nicely when it's blocked in like that. I don't want to make it overly crisp, but I just want to put a few transitional warms in, just following the outline and softening it in a couple of places. If you notice, I'm not blending, just putting down those little directional marks, sort of, I suppose, smaller blocked in brush strokes. I'm trying to retain the confident mark making and that balance of mark making and accuracy. It's a bit of a difficult tightrope to walk, but it's well worth the patience and practice. Okay, and then let's look at the shadow just under the nose. It just needs putting up in that nostril a little higher, and under there as well. Draws down under the point and up to there, and again I'll just soften that through because it's a bit heavy and a bit dark, so I just again take those edges away and soften them through. I need to show that point. I think on my highlight will do that. A bit of negative painting, sort of painting the behind the nose here will help. It's back to that important point of you're painting that region, that whole area, not just the nose itself. And the highlight of this needs to come a little lower. A little bit more paint on the brush. Of course, when you paint a highlight, just paint it that little thicker. Otherwise, it won't stick on. That's better. Okay, I want to strengthen that highlight here. Put that in a bit stronger. And possibly higher as well, actually. Back to there. Good. Wipe off the excess on a rag or the board or a piece of tissue paper, or whoever's standing next to you. Just get off the excess and soften that in. Mid-tone brush. Wipe off the colour. Don't wash it, otherwise your brush will get wet. And just pushing that mid-tone back in there. Let's just follow the nose across now. There is that really satisfying cool shadow on the tip of the nose. Can I, any way of potentially getting that? I don't know. Let's sort of suggest it a bit paler. It's a bit cooler there. And again, soften those edges. Good, and there's a nose ring in there, but I don't know if I'll put that in, I'm not sure. I don't know if that will add or distract. That's the thing when you've got to sort of make these decisions of just because it's there doesn't mean it has to be painted. You have to always ask yourself critically, what will this do? Will it help or will it distract? Just developing the shadow behind there. Don't be afraid to go dark if it's dark. If you're not sure, squint, and if it looks darker, then pop it in. Swapping brush, cool, bring in the cool on that side. Possibly paler as well. Yeah, it's paler. One straight, there you go. Okay, so now I'm quite happy with this area. We're moving now systematically to the lips. The lips need a bit of work. You know, the shape here, the bottom lip. This needs kind of cutting in a bit. It's sticking up a little bit too high. The highlight on the upper lip, the philtrum, the top of the bottom of the philtrum, so the light hitting the lips here. That really needs to be expressed. The way the light just sits and catches it, and also warmer as well. You know, the top lip at the moment hasn't got any paint on it, So that underpainting has kind of suggested it thus far. So let's get a bit more colour into it, shall we? Tonally it's dark. The upper lip is always darker than the bottom lip because the upper lip faces away from light, because it faces in, whereas the bottom lip, because it's full, catches the light a lot better. Bit of warmth in there with the Cad Red. That's pretty much Cad Red neat going in there because I can't quite that purpley crimson that is there in the lips, so I'm having to use the Cad Red as my alternative. It feels a little bit pointy, so let's just take the highlight for the upper lip and just sculpt it and cut in, we call that, just to shape it and push it to where it should be. And bring in a bit of highlight in there. Now we have the subtle teeth showing in the middle there. It's so subtle. So I need to make sure I achieve that. There's the slight darkness on that side of the lips as well. And I want to strengthen the red in that bottom left hand of the lip there. So I do like the way that strength of that really stands out there. Be bold, nice bit of red, so that really stands out. And again, I can put in a bit of more highlight as well on the lips. Quite textured, because the way it catches the lips there. And then to get that suggestion of sort of teeth hiding in the middle in there. Not too light, but just a slight hint. And you don't want to paint individual teeth, but just a brush stroke, and hopefully it will read and look like it. I kind of want, you know, your brains to do the work and sort of make out what it is without me having to really describe everything. And that's I think the secret for doing things like teeth. You know, don't do every single tooth individually that'll look static. Just sort of paint them as a set, a group, and then just paint the odd little bit of one or two little gaps in a darker tone, and that's it. And don't stress over every individual tooth. Just paint them as a set, as a collection, and it will work. It will read a lot more authentically. I just want to strengthen that dark, deep, where the mouth finishes here. So really put that on quite thick. It sort of stops about there. It's amazing. I was always still surprised that you think it's black enough on the canvas, and then you get a big blob of black on your brush, and you put it on and it stands out again and again. So always remember that you can always go that a little bit darker if need to. Bit of highlight there, just to strengthen that shadow under lip here. And again, I'm going to do that in quite a warm transitional shadow here. Little trace back. Strengthen the shadow here on the jaw. And we're almost at that point then where we can assess it as a whole and see if there's any finishing touches we can do. And down to the chin now. I'm still looking at it as a series of shapes, little strength of highlight there. It's a bit of a clash on my painting. It sort of goes from this tone to that tone, and it's quite abrupt. And I need a sort of another colour, another tone in the middle of those that will just help that transition and help it look rounder. So this sort of warmer red there, slightly darker there, and that will just help the roundness of that a little bit more. And again, with my dark, let's just a slightly straighter point of the chin there. I also feel the dark could come up higher as well. Just this shadow could just come up a fraction higher. Just going to treat it softly here, so I'm just sort of bringing the edge of those two brush strokes together, the dark and the light, and just allowing them to marry into each other and melt. I don't want too harsh an edge where the face curves away from us and disappears, so that's what I'm doing there, just to strengthen the darkness under that point. Remember, edges sort of scream for attention. Edges are things that are clear and focused and crisp, and that's good for things maybe where your focal point is, but for parts of the picture where you don't want to draw attention to, like things like hair or the jaw, neck, ears, the sort of what we call supporting features, then if you treat them that little softer with the edges, the viewer's eye won't be drawn to them first of all. They'll keep hopefully looking at that focal point. Let's just darken this mass here. Go darker, you can go again. Okay, so let's sort of have a look and zoom out. I'm just going to bring in just a few points up here. Sort of do a few of these little marks like that to show that I've got some really interesting texture for the hair. And again, I feel it's just needed up here as well. A little bit of linseed oil in there just to help the brush strokes sort of travel that bit further. And again, I want to balance that with some of the darkness on the right hand side, sort of here. So I feel this needs to be really quite allow that brush just to melt away. Let's look at the top of the hair and put in some of these again, little marks to suggest we can see the odd one or two just hiding over here. Let's just take the dark. This one's just gone a little bit too big, a bit too bossy. Let's take some of that pale green mixture and pop that there. At this stage, I always take a very short break and then I'll look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. Any tweaks and adjustments could be done then, but it could be over. We'll have to wait and see.